Depression is a leading disability worldwide. Every 3 seconds, someone somewhere takes their own life. In Australia, 7 people every day. Suicide rates have steadily been increasing in the last 10 years. Black Dog Ride aims to put an end to this trend by engaging with local communities and getting people to talk about mental health.
The original Black Dog Ride around Australia was in July 2009, and since then we've done the ride to the Red Centre for 4 years. And I thought for the 5th year we'd make it a commemorative ride and go around Australia again. This time I took a few mates. There was 60 of us headed off on the same day as that original ride on July 26th, and yeah, it was an amazing adventure.
Steve had a long-held desire to travel around Australia, but it wasn't until tragedy struck his closest friend that he decided to set out on the first Black Dog Ride.
The catalyst for the ride was really the suicide death of my best mate's wife, Anna.
It was March 2008. I lost my dear wife and mother to my children. She'd fall asleep in the lounge, and I'd look at her and I'd say, "There's something missing. There's something I didn't know." There was like a missing piece to the puzzle, and I could never work it out. And then it came out that she'd been molested as a child. And not only had this man been molesting her, he had been molesting her brother at the same time. Anna was 18, they were living in Canberra, she came to Perth, and John was on his own in Canberra, and he was very fond of Anna, and Anna very fond of him. And apparently he attempted suicide on what had happened to him as a young boy. Anna was never told by her mother. 6 years before we lost Anna, Anna's mother came to stay with us. And one night she had a few scotches and she disclosed that John, as a 16-year-old, had tried to take his own life. And at that time, it was an opportune time for Anna to tell her mother that she was involved and she knew, but she didn't. And she became remorseful about it, and remorse led to depression. She did have one attempt at suicide before we lost her, and it was kept quiet because she didn't want anyone to know. And then 4 or 5 months later we lost her.
It brought back memories of losing my mum to suicide many years before, and having a daughter who suffers from depression. It just all came up in one overwhelming feeling that I had to do something to talk about this silent killer, if you like, and this illness that was not discussed to a level that I thought was healthy.
I was in a bad space. I mean, had I not been the same sort of person I am, I probably would have felt doing the same thing. I just didn't want to be here. As 1,000 times I wanted to die, you know. My best mate had just disappeared. You know, the girl that I loved and cherished had gone.
I made the decision at the wake that I needed to do something, and came up with the concept of getting on my bike and riding around the country, and, as we say many times on this ride, starting the conversation.
Mental illness is really common. It's much more common than a lot of physical illnesses. The current estimates are that about 1 in 5 Australians aged 16 and over are walking around every year with a diagnosable common mental illness, depressive disorder, anxiety disorders, substance use disorder. And many of those people do not know they've got the illness, and many of them do not seek help and get the right help to help them. And there is lots of help out there. Mental illness isn't a life sentence. It's an episode like any other illness, and people do get better from it, and we just have to change those stigmatising attitudes.
It is okay to use the suicide word. It is okay to reach out to someone you're worried about and actually ask the question. If they're not thinking of suicide, they'll know that you care. If they reveal that they are thinking about suicide, then you don't need to fix the problem, you just need to stay with them.
The main thing is talk about it. Talk to people. There's a lot of support. It's getting better. The support is getting better in communities.
My belief is that depression has one aim and one aim only, and that's to put you in the grave. And if you don't do something about it, that's where you'll end up.
Black Dog Ride highlights the importance of recognising mental health in Australia, especially depression. 1 in 5 Australians suffer some form of mental health, and the Black Dog has proven time and time again since 2009 that the campaign that the Black Dog Ride does nationally has highlighted the importance of recognising those with mental health issues.
From humble beginnings, the Black Dog Ride has grown larger than Steve could ever have imagined. Hundreds of riders from all over Australia have come together to participate in numerous events, from the annual ride to the Red Centre to the statewide one-dayers.
The growth has surprised me, but I suppose I had an inkling of the pent-up demand, if you like, when I did my first ride, just from the riders that popped in and out of the ride. But the take-up has been pretty overwhelming. The number of people who have a passion for the cause that they share with me, and not all the circumstances are the same.
We can go anytime, I suppose. Beautiful part of the world, lovely facilities here, lovely morning tea. You're made very well. Typical Black Dog Ride. How's that?
My dog's always looking forward, he's not looking back.
We'll believe you.
The ride began at Bateau Bay, 100 kilometres north of Sydney. From there, the group travelled north through Queensland, across the top end, down along the West Australian coast, along the Nullarbor, and finally finishing at Bondi Beach. In total, the team covered 14,500 kilometres in just 32 days.
Everyone's on this ride for their own personal reasons, but most of them have a pretty strong connection to depression themselves. Personally, they've suffered, or a loved one's suffered, or tragically, they've lost someone.
I'm the daughter of a returned serviceman and career soldier, so I grew up with suicide as a reality of my life, and I've lived with depression and PTSD, and I care for someone with bipolar.
There'd been a little bit of depression in my family, and my mother had suffered from it.
When I was 18, I lost my mum to suicide 2 months after my birthday. I've got a lot of close family who have suffered with depression, as well as suicide attempts, and a couple of friends which have actually passed away due to suicide.
I've had a long journey with depression myself over the years, and I've experienced suicide firsthand in my family.
Oh, absolutely. I went within a cat's whisker, a funny term to use, but of taking my own life. And that's another reason why I'm involved now, because if I can save one life in what I'm doing, I'll be more than happy.
Everyone's got reasons, like they want to spread the word and do that, and yes, that is all part of it. But I think I wanted to spread the word by saying who I am and why it's affected me.
You go through some of these troubles and you decide, well, maybe I can go and save some, or not save somebody else, but get somebody else to think about it and actually admit that they've got a problem.
Isolation and limited access to services means those living in rural and remote areas can be particularly vulnerable to mental illness.
Each year, our Northern Territory frontline police officers deal with the effects of mental illness, depression, and sadly, on far too many cases, suicide, the permanent solution to what is often a temporary problem. And it struck me that when a jurisdiction the size of the Northern Territory loses more people each year from them taking their own lives than in road crashes, we have the capacity to do something about it.
As we've heard as we're going round, it's the funding's not there in regional areas, and that's where suicide is a big problem.
Rural Australia and rural around the world, I suppose, is struggling. So when we look at globalisation and we look at financial constraints and production, all that, these people are struggling, and they're doing it hard.
The smaller communities in particular, they need all the help they can get. And if we can just give them a little bit of hope and just let them know that they're not doing this on their own. And I think that's one of the important things, whether it's an individual or it's a community, they need to know that they're not on their own and that there are people out there that care and that are trying to help.
They are people who die, who shouldn't die, and we need to, as a community, as a mature community, do what we can to rally around those individuals and provide them with the support that enables them to get their lives back where it should be.